Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY and you can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob. I am foodafan on Instagram and on Twitter. I have a blog at foodafan.com.
And I think this is episode 53. Can't believe it. 53. I mean, it feels like we just did our 50th episode and now we are at 53.
Yeah, it's going fast. Soon we're going to be at 100.
Yeah, and hopefully we're going to get there. I think we are. But, I'm very, very excited. And speaking of being excited, Jacob, we've had a lot of things. I mean, I'm looking at the show notes and I know half of these are links, so it looks longer than usual. But there's quite a few things happening in the pen world that we want to talk about this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Before we get started on that, I just want to take a little time to say that we had a pretty big earthquake in Japan. It was about 12 o'clock, 11:45 to be precise. And it was pretty big. It was magnitude 7.3, so that's pretty big. In Tokyo, what I felt was, shaking side by side and then also up and down, right? And where this earthquake was located was actually near Fukushima, near Tohoku, where I think your significant other's family comes from, right?
Yeah, they're a little bit higher up, but it was close to Daiichi, the nuclear reactor, right? So that was one of the earlier concerns.
Yeah, and it was very reminiscent of what happened, almost 11 years ago now. 11, 12, I don't remember, but yeah, obviously one of the retailers there that we know and love is Pentanote, and we're going to talk a little bit about their new pen later as well. But Pentanote is located in Tohoku, and they've created pens that kind of the Shinehao no Akari is a tribute to the 3/11 earthquake, and kind of strength that the people in Tohoku have to muster in themselves. They've actually closed for the while because of the earthquake. They've had water leakage, they had damage to the walls, and they basically said, we're not in a position to do business right now.
Yeah.
In an older building, so they don't know when they can reopen, and they can't take phone calls at their shop because everything is kind of broken. So yeah, I just want to take this time, to wish them, hope they're safe, and I hope they can rebuild and come back strong, because they've got some pretty banging pens that they've just released. So I sincerely hope that they're going to be able to get back on their feet.
Yeah, for sure, I agree, and I think there are two things here. Right, one is obviously being in Fukushima, they are closer to the epicenter, so it was probably felt in a different way up there. The other thing is, like here in Japan, as you know, the building standards change every few years. So in general, it's said that the more recent the building is, the more earthquake proof it is going to be. So in general, it's said that if you live in a building that is built year 2000 or later, then you're going to be fine. If you live in an older one, it's pretty bad. I remember actually, I was here. I was here working during the big one in 2011, and I was in a bit older building. I think it was built in the 70s or something like that. And I remember, I was in the office and we had this conference call. And as you know, earthquakes happen in Japan almost all the time, right? So you don't generally, if you've been here for a while, you don't panic, you don't start, running out the moment the ground is shaking, because it happens so often, right? So we were on a conference call and it started shaking and we just didn't pay too much attention. We just kept talking, and then it kept going for half a minute or more, and it just get more and more intense. And at one point we just said, this is not a normal one. And we're going to have to hang up for a while. And then I remember for a while. Yeah. And then, and then I remember I had to take cover for the first time ever. I had to take cover under the desk. And in Japan, most buildings, at least office buildings, I think they're required to have this bag under each desk.
Yeah.
And the bag contains this like emergency stuff stuff you need during an earthquake. So you got this helmet, you got a flashlight and some other stuff. So for the first time ever, I put on that helmet. I didn't need a flashlight, but I put on the helmet. And I remember I was looking up and I saw these like monitors. They were like gliding back and forth on the desks, and some were fell off the desk. And again, this was an older building, so it was felt in a very different. It was really shaking. But also remember, I mean, going back to this whole thing about building standards. Prior to that, I worked in Roppongi Hills, which is one of the newer buildings in Tokyo. And in Roppongi Hills, it doesn't feel the same way. It just like sways back and forth. It feels like you're like a sailing boat or something like that. It doesn't shake in the same way. So that is the difference between a building that is modern and built according to the latest earthquake standards and an old one. So, if you're living in an old building and if you're anywhere close to the epicenter, then it's pretty scary.
Yeah, and now we are a building standards podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, even in Tokyo, we had some areas that lost power. Fortunately, I didn't lose power.
Oh, really? You didn't? Yeah, because that happened here. And I remember, first of all, I woke up in the middle of the night because, unlike you, I go to sleep during reasonable hours. So I've been asleep for like a good 2 hours. I woke up and we lost power. And then there was this announcement. You know, they had these like big megaphones or whatever, like all over Tokyo. There was this announcement saying that be careful when you cross the street because all the traffic lights are off, so you might not see the cars coming or whatever. So be extra careful when you cross the streets.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah.
Anyways, hope everybody's doing well. Last time we had a major earthquake, I know that I think it was Pentanote again, poor guys, but they had a picture where all the ink bottles, smashed onto the ground. And obviously this time it's probably worse. So I hope they have insurance. I'm pretty sure they will have insurance for that. But yeah, I'm hoping that they recover quickly.
For sure.
This segment we haven't done in quite a while, so I thought it would be interesting to bring it back once in a while. But we haven't done like acquisition segments in a while, and that's kind of on purpose. But I feel like this time we have things that are interesting enough to kind of, talk a little bit about on the podcast. Before we do that, let's do some updates on shipping because you and we both ship quite a lot to overseas, right?
Yeah, and me not nearly as much as you do, but I did see this notice on Japan Post's website. So from May or June, I can't remember anymore. They are going to increase prices for EMS and e-packet. I think it was also surface mail, and it was quite significant. I think today, if you send an EMS package to the US, then the price starts at like 2,400 yen, so it's like $20 ish, right? From May or from June, the starting price is going to be like 3,600 yen, if I remember correctly, and you can, if you choose e-packet instead, which by the way is still not available for US. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was an insignificant difference. You're paying almost as much for e-packet as you are for EMS, and you don't get the same insurance and you don't get the same speed. And even service mail has become quite expensive. So yeah, it's more difficult than ever to ship.
Yeah, and not only that, but with the war in Ukraine right now, planes are not able to fly over Russia and obviously not able to fly over Ukraine. So there is no EMS service to Europe at all right now, which has been a problem for me. I'm trying to see if I can find some forwarding services to help me out on that. But in general, shipping has gone to a not great place. And yeah, I think we're going to see prices increases on shipping. And this has been actually kind of a trend, right? Because since we started doing this podcast, they've increased EMS prices 3 times, including this one, I think. So yeah, we're going to see logistics get more and more expensive.
For sure.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I have here is you were on the Pen Addict podcast, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a bit curious about like how this came to be. I listened to the Pen Addict this morning, and Brad said it was kind of like a last minute thing. You had to work through some time zones, but how does one get invited onto the Pen Addict podcast? I'm asking for a friend.
Well, so I got a message, I think it was Twitter DM or something like that, just a few days before, and he said that it's last minute, sorry about that, but I need a guest for the podcast. I think the reason was that Mike was in the US to cover that, like the Apple event or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he asked if there was any way I could find time to be on the podcast, and I looked at my schedule and I managed to find a time slot early Tuesday morning for me and late Monday for him. So
right,
yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah, so I mean, you wake up at like 5:00, so
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so not it's. I mean, it's almost like a normal time for you.
Exactly.
So I kind of want you to just speak a little bit about. I don't want to do like too long, but how was it? You had a great conversation. What was the kind of feedback that you've gotten from that?
What I would say is Brad is a very good interviewer, right? He keeps, we talked about that off the podcast, but he keeps the conversation flowing, and it's very easy to be a guest on that podcast, right?
Yeah. I for reference for folks who maybe don't have the context why I was on Brad's podcast for the members, and yeah, Brad was a incredibly good interviewer. His questions kept flowing, and as Brad says, he could probably talk for like 5 or 6 hours about this, especially since we don't really talk in voice often, right? With Brad Dowdy, sometimes we might exchange some DMs, we might post something on Twitter and interact with each other, but when it comes down to like the in-depth stuff, it's obvious, I think, once you're talking to him, and it might not be obvious when you're like listening, right? But when you're actually speaking with him, you see, okay, yeah, this is why they've been able to do it for 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he is genuinely interested, right? He wants to know more, and that informs his question, and that's why it's so easy to be a guest on his podcast.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is I better step up my game, otherwise I'm going to be fired. All right. Hopefully you don't replace me with Brad Dowdy. But I think overall it was an enjoyable experience, right? Would you say that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it afterwards as well, because we actually saw each other last weekend at the latest Wagner event. And we used to cover like these Wagner events when we would go more often, but now I think we go maybe once, maybe at most twice a year now. And I think this time we went and we got a couple people out to go. It was fun. Is there anything you want to say about the event?
I would say it was bigger than usual, as in the venue was pretty much the same as usual, but there were both more tables and more attendees, I would say. I'm not quite sure why, but it was quite like some of these Wagner events you go to, it feels like, why am I spending 2,000 yen when there are like 4 tables and they just old friends talking to each other? There's nothing I can buy here anyway.
Yeah. And I briefly considered having a table there, but then I kind of decided I didn't have enough interesting pens to warrant getting a table anyways. And, I walked in, took a look around, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but from what was on the tables, it was like, just the standard stuff. And this is the thing with Wagner is that it's not that the things aren't good, but it's more that I think every time you go, it's pretty much the same stuff.
Well, some people bring really interesting pens, but they're not for sale, right? So at the same table, there are like 2 trays, and one tray is for sale, the other one isn't, and it's not obvious, right? So there was one guy who had this blue custom Urushi and some, classic pens and some other, like, unobtainium pens, right? And he didn't label them properly, so everyone asked him if he could buy the blue custom Marussia, and he just left and said, no, they're not for sale.
Yeah, I think that's the idea behind trying to buy a blue custom Marussia, right? It's just, oh, you want a custom blue Marussia? Yeah, good luck with that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But you found something interesting because you read the blog more than I did.
Yeah, so 1 or 2 days before the event, Morrison did a blog post where he put up a number of pens for sale. So the idea is that some of the pens, like people who can't go to the event in Tokyo, they might still want to be able to buy or sell pens. So I think the idea is that people send pens to him and he puts them up on the blog, and you can buy them from him. And you can either pick them up at the event or he can send them to you or something like that. And I noticed a Wagner 2016 pen, which was the Sailor Rialo, Prugia Rialo in purple with like subtle glitter, and it's got this laser engraved nib. And I noticed before the event, like normally he updates his blog post when the pen is sold, and I noticed it wasn't sold, but he didn't have it on his tray. So I asked him, what about that purple Rialo? Do you still have it? So he reached for his pen wrap and he said, yeah, I still have it here. So I said, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, because you asked me that morning, you said, did you buy the purple Rialo? I had no idea what you were talking about. I was like, oh, what purple Rialo? And then you ignored me.
No, because the conversation went in another direction, right? I wasn't intentionally ignoring you. It was just it took a different. We went on a tangent.
I think it's hilarious. Yeah, I think we were like, oh, yeah. What is this purple Rialo? Anyways, whatever. Yeah.
But to me, the interesting thing about the Wagner event wasn't the purple Rialo. To me, the most interesting thing was that I got to talk a bit to Mori-san and to Tomoko. And I got some information about this year's Wagner 3776 pen. So they said a few things. So the new pen is going to be a light color. I wasn't supposed to say what color, so let's just say it's going to be a light color. It's going to be a nice design, so with these shaper cut grooves. They are hoping to do ruthenium or like black iron plating, which I don't think I've ever seen on a platinum pen before. So this may or may not happen, but they were hoping to do that. It would be very cool on a platinum 3776. The last thing is that, let's just say that the nib, not just the nib width, but more importantly, the nib shape might be a surprise. And we'll have to wait until June, but it could be a surprise.
The nib shape might be
a surprise. Yes, the shape itself.
The shape of the nib or the tipping?
No, the shape of the nib itself.
From platinum. So you're saying that they might not use the standard platinum 3776 nib?
No, all I'm saying is that it may be surprised, and maybe I'll tell you more after the podcast.
All right. We'll see about that. Okay. And then on my side, obviously, we met up, we talked, we had a great time, and I brought this Aurora OBB nib that I had bought.
The hammerhead
from a store. Yeah, I think this OBB nib was crazy, and I hadn't known about Aurora's OBB nibs because I feel like a lot of talk is given to like Mont Blanc's OBB or O3B. You see a lot of talk about Pelikan's OBB nibs, but I feel like on the internet there's not much that's said about Aurora's OBB nib, and I think I understand it, but I think it's a little bit unjustified because not a lot of retailers will carry this OBB nib. Even so one of the places that I get nibs from sometimes is, let's say, in the US it's like nibsmith.com or FP Nibs or whatever it may be. And usually, and for Auroras, I've bought 2 Auroras from Nibsmith, and they usually have all of the options, including the gotcha nibs, but nobody has this OBB nib. So, on a whim, when I was in Hong Kong last year, I went to Muse Pens and they had this OBB nib. And I tried it out without really a lot of expectations. But oh my goodness, this was such a good writing pen. I was like, I would love to have this OBB nib. So I ordered the OBB nib. It came and it has this hammerhead look. And I just think it's extremely unique.
But it's not a lot of tipping. I feel like they're cheating. I mean, if you buy it with, I mean, if you want like a stub-like nib, I'm sure you will be happy. But if you are a nib grinder, or rather, if you buy an OBB with the intention of sending something to nib grinder to grind to something else because you think that the BB means a lot of tipping, then you might be disappointed.
Well, I think that's exactly why it's not talked about often, because I wouldn't call this... Well, I would say that this is like an OBB of old in the sense that it's not a big blob of tipping. It's actually more like an oblique italic. It's very much for kind of calligraphy in that sense.
Right.
And as you said, the way that they've welded it means that you can do a size reduction, but you can't get rid of that oblique slant. So I definitely think that that's probably why not a lot of people talk about it, because it looks and feels much more like a specialized nib.
Yeah.
And I think I have the opportunity, actually, I own one now, an Aurora BB nib, and it looks like that, but it's flat instead. So I was talking to the owner of Muse Pens, and he was telling me that the nib worker, the nib master at Aurora, is very, very, very precise, very good with his grinding, and I don't think they, these kind of more specialty nibs for them, it's like you've already sent it to a nib grinder.
That's something I always wonder. I mean, in general, if you are a pen maker and you have an in-house like nib specialist, for what kind of grinds is the nib specialist involved? Because I imagine that if you're doing like a fine medium, then maybe there is some inspection involved, but you probably don't need to do anything with a nib, right? So for what grinds do you need? For what kind of factory grinds do you need help from like a nib grinder?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I know that some manufacturers, they have people who can offer you grinds, but as you said, not a lot of manufacturers seem to offer grinds, right? And then if we think about like Pilot, for example, we always lament that there aren't really like nib workers in Japan, but if you think about Pilot, instead of having like specialty grinds, they've just made that a nib option, like the stub, for example, right? Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And then afterwards, I got 2 new Realos, and I thought this was interesting enough to put on the podcast because normally if it's another Sailor, then it's okay, it's another Sailor, but we know that Sailor has been discouraging retailers from releasing Realo pens because we've heard rumors about their manufacture, the process not being very good, and the kind of failures that they have on these. And specifically, we heard that they don't like to do demonstrator or see-through Realos because of the glue application that will be visible. So I was surprised when Pentanote came out with this Letters from Fukushima pen, which is called Shinobu no Midori-iro. And this is a beautiful, beautiful pen. I don't think you've seen it in person, right?
There was some pen you brought to Wagner. I can't remember which one.
It probably wasn't this one, okay, because I hadn't received it yet. But I have it in hand now, and this pen has a white section. I think that's my only qualm with this. First of all, from the pictures, I think we've talked a little bit about how Japanese retailers just take the most awful pictures, right?
They do.
Yeah, but this is not the case with Pentonoto now, because Pentonoto, they take amazing pictures. I think they take the best, product photography photos, especially of their unique products. I think their feed probably still needs like a little bit of work in terms of like the strategy, but just the product photos that they have on this pen, it's just incredible. So you look at this pen, you look at the picture, and I have the link on the show notes. It just looks like an incredible mint green color, right? But then when it arrived and I opened it, I realized that it actually has this subtle, and when it's in hand, it's not actually that subtle anymore, this gold glitter that's inside the pen, and that's something that just doesn't come across on the photos at all. And this pen, I think, is a massive hit for Pentonoto. I was on the website, and instantly all the zoom nibs sold out. I couldn't even get any zoom nibs, and then everything was sold out within 15 minutes.
So you're telling me that the zooms sold out, and it's not your fault this time?
No. I tried to get the zoom nibs, but they were already sold out by the time I got there.
Okay.
So absolutely incredible. Another thing that I don't think we've talked about is that the finial logo, which has the anchor, right? So they've now moved all of the new production sailors to have the new anchor logo. And what's interesting is on the Owl pen, the anchor logo is kind of like a solid piece of, I don't know if it's metal or if it's just gilding. But here the logo is like hollow inside. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I noticed this actually when I bought some new Hachimonjia, and I had the old version, the new version, and the anchors were different. So I'm fairly certain that the Sailor nibs, and actually I know this for a fact, the new Sailor nibs will also have the new logo without the 1911 on it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is a pretty pen for sure. I mean, just looking at Pentonote's photo, I agree. I would still say that I think it would be even better in a profit shape. I can't get over how unbalanced Pro gears look when they are Realos. So a normal cartridge converter Pro gear is perfectly balanced because it's flat on both ends, right? But if you have a Realo, then you have this tapering on the barrel with a blind cap, and it just looks like a Daikon to me.
Well, what can I say? You're wrong. Yeah. So this nib has a little mountain rabbit on it, which I think is very, very adorable. Amazing pen. The other pen that I got is from now our friend Izumi. And for the last few times we've met, we've also seen Izumi pens, and he's been able to give me a load of insights because he actually designs and commissions a lot of these pens, working with different retailers. And this time he came out with a, I don't know what the exact word for it. I don't know if I can call it pearlescent or iridescent or whatever, but it looks a lot like, looks kind of like that new shiny Kaweco that came out recently.
Yeah,
and
for sure, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and this pen, it's so strange because it looks like a white material if there's no like direct light shining on it, but now with like my room light, it kind of glows this green color, and somehow I just can't stop looking at it. And he made an edition of 80, and I actually knew about this pen since the Tokyo International Pen Show, because that's what we were discussing downstairs at the cafe. But now that it's come out, this is just absolutely incredible.
He never puts any prices, at least not on his Instagram post. So I guess if you need to ask, you can't afford it.
Well, to be honest, the prices aren't that bad considering what it is. The prices aren't that bad, and we speak in Chinese because he's a Chinese guy. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And these nibs originally come in the new standard stamped nibs, which we kind of talked about before, but not really in depth. But you know how it has sailor nibs traditionally are stamped with either H and then their nib size, or S and then their nib size, right? And then sometimes you had these weird like outliers that don't have any stamping at all.
Yeah, the old 14K ones. Yeah, there are some mysterious ones. Yeah.
Moving forward, there will be no H designation on the nibs anymore.
That makes sense though, because H only made sense when they actually sold S nibs, right?
Apparently, they still do for Ohashido, right?
Well, but we, as you also mentioned, we have seen very recently that Ohashido has moved to, at least for some of their pens, 21K nibs. So I'm not sure if Sailor has finally given up on S nibs even for Ohashido. We need to ask Mr. Uehara next time.
Yeah, which would be a shame, because I've been flexifying some of these 14K nibs and they're just really, really nice to work with. So that would be very, very unfortunate. That's my new Realos. Really beautiful pens, and I'm glad, because it seems like Sailor is kind of getting more on board with making Realos again.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, they have obviously, I mean, one of the biggest reason why they accepted the big investment that we have covered extensively is that they wanted to rebuild their Kure headquarters and factory, and just improve their production, and maybe we're seeing the fruits of that now.
Yeah, and we'll have to take a field trip out to Kure when they accept visitors.
Oh yes, for sure, that would be fun.
All right, another day, another scandal.
Yeah, you've been all over this one.
I think last week, or sometime a few days ago, a Twitter thread was started by, I think, Cult Pens out in the UK, and they're saying, hey, can you guess what pen is in our picture? And who replies but TWSBI? And TWSBI replies, it's Narwhal, who stole our piston design. Okay, so before we move on, what do you think about this exchange, which has, by the way, since been deleted?
Yeah, that was so random to me, and it ties into another discussion about why this whole thing is happening right now. It makes, based on that comment alone, it makes you think that they got some new guy coming in at TWSBI and suddenly very upset about this in a way that they haven't been before. This
kind of migrated to Reddit, and some guy, originally he didn't post any evidence, and then afterwards he came back with a screenshot, which, by the way, has also been deleted. But I took receipts and I downloaded it, and I'm just gonna read out this letter, because there's a whole letter. There's like they had pictures, they had like dimensions. It was very, very detailed. But this screenshot, I think, is just at the very end of this email, which I'm gonna read out. There, which is Narwhal. First, quote-unquote, original fountain pen contains an almost exact copy of our 580 Eco, I don't know what the correct way to say that is, but Eco piston mechanism design. The same mechanism is now used in their Nautilus and again, I don't know how to say this word. Shulkill? I don't know what this is, but I think it's kind of a fish, I don't know, marine animal lineup. Moonman has done the same, copying our piston mechanism in their T1 with the additional of a knockoff Kaweco cap. Piston fillers and caps are not a proprietary technology. Several companies have piston mechanisms. However, copying a design down to every dimensional spec is unethical and a design infringement. In order to uphold our own integrity and years of hard work, effective May 1st, 2022, TWSBI will no longer conduct business with any business affiliates / partners who offer these copy products for sale, including but not limited to Narwhal and Moonman. We value the many years of mutual business relationships with each of you and hope to continue many more years forward. Thank you for your understanding and continuing support. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, I haven't seen the full email. I don't even know if it's real. I assume it's real because I listened to the Pen Addict, the most recent episode, and I think Brad said that he had seen the whole thing, and that makes me think even that it exists. There's the real thing, right? I wanted to see if I can get some first-hand information. So I'd actually reached out to TWSBI and asked them a number of questions, including, is this even a real story? And I did that almost a week ago. And I contacted both the Taiwan office and the US office, and I didn't hear anything back. So that was kind of interesting. But so assuming this is correct, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. One is that clearly they are saying, or they are realizing, that they don't have a legal case here, right? Or either they don't think they have a legal case, or they think they would be not worth the cost or effort to pursue that, right?
Yeah, I think on the whether it's real or not, I know for a fact that this is real. I haven't seen the full document, but multiple very reliable sources, including retailers, have told me that this is real, and that this was the letter. So I think we can, put that to bed immediately. And then on the legal front, I think they've kind of obviously been inspired by Kaweko's how do I say this, adventures, and they've chosen to take a different route, which we'll talk a little bit about afterwards.
Right, but so they are probably recognizing that they don't have a legal case, but they still want to do something, right? So that means they are really, they are presumably the larger company here, and presumably most, I would assume, I don't know, but I would assume that most retailers probably selling more TWSBI pens than normal pens, only because, TWSBI is the bigger brand. So they are kind of acting like a bully here, right? And they are trying to exclude a competitor that is not doing anything illegal just because they don't like it, which really doesn't look good.
Yeah. And yeah, Brad said something. You know what? Let's talk about what Brad said later. I want to get into the nitty gritty because Brad kind of mentioned that I did this video. He didn't go into it. I saw another Reddit post about how TWSBI themselves had copied Pelican, and I think this post is still online, and inside they have a picture of the TWSBI Echo and the Pelican M800, and the mechanisms look almost exactly the same. And in it there is an exchange on Fountain Pen Network from 2009, which was when I believe TWSBI first became an up and coming brand. And so there's a little bit, and then this guy, who very interestingly his handle is Diplomat. So Diplomat says, very neat, thank you. I love the packaging and the comparative shots with the M800 and M600. Do you have any patented innovation in the mechanism that you care to share? Cheers. And then Speedy, which I believe was the founder, the owner of TWSBI, says, on this pen, there is not new patent involved. Most of the mechanism or system available on Fountain are long time ago innovation. Correct me if I am wrong. Since we are a self-contained pen maker with full capacity to do design through production in-house, our major interest is how we can let people come to enjoy the handwriting with the nice and affordable price through the shortest channel.
Yeah. To me, the biggest mystery is why this is happening now. The only two, possible reasons I can think of is that maybe there have been some, discussions going on for a while, and maybe those discussions broke down one way or another, or there's some new guy at TWSBI that's, came in guns blazing, trying to do something here, which we can explain that strange tweet, right? Because as they are saying too, I mean, Narwhal has been selling piston filler pens for at least over a year, I mean, probably longer than that, and
I think 2 or 3 years. Yeah,
and Moonman T1 isn't really there. I mean, it was like 1 year ago or something like that, right? So it's a little bit odd that it's happening right now. It makes you wonder what the actual trigger was.
Yeah. So I got into discussion about this on Facebook, of course. Best place for discussions. And somebody actually mentioned that maybe the war in Ukraine, and by the way, a lot of people in Taiwan see the war in Ukraine as an uncanny parallel to what they can expect for Taiwan and China. And Narwhal is made in China. We pretty much for a fact know that Moonman produces Narwhal pens. Everything is pretty much the same. They have slight mechanism differences, but enough for me to at least determine that I believe that the same factory is making these pens. So maybe there's some kind of like a political reasoning behind why now they're getting like sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a long shot, but there's no other obvious explanations. So, I mean, at least it's a possibility, right? And you're right, I mean, about the Moonman similarity. I mean, one thing you can easily tell is that Narwhal and Moonman, they use the same nib units, right? And this is not Bock nib units. This is not Joe nib units. This is Moonman's own, or the nib unit that all the Moonman's pens have, and also the same that Narwhal pens have, right? And there's good reason to believe that the nibs, the quote unquote in-house Narwhal nibs, are actually made by the same company. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. The actual patent, and people are like, oh, did TWSBI, did this patent, blah, blah, blah. The actual patent for the piston filler was first filed in the 1920s. Don't want to get too deep into like patent stuff, but I actually, I saw this and I actually have all 3 of these pens. So I did a little I did a little Instagram live to see what parts of this, claim is true, because, and I'm going to reread a little bit of the letter. Copying a design down to every dimensional spec is unethical and a design infringement. Now, Brad Dowdy on his podcast said he read the letter, and even in TWSBI's own pictures and measurements, they are different. But when you disassemble the pens, they kind of look similar. So I went about, and I had these 4 pens. I went about trying to fit each of the parts together. And there's what I call the washer part, which is the actual, piston head. There's a connector. There's a piston spindle. Yeah. And then there's the piston knob, right? And what I found is that every single one of these parts are not interchangeable among each other. The Moonman knob and the TWSBI knob are barely interchangeable, but that's only because of the small, I would say, gap in the tolerances. You can clearly feel that it's harder to screw on a Moonman knob onto the TWSBI unit, even though it theoretically, I mean, it works, but it feels bad doing it. So my conclusion at the end of that video was that Moonman and Narwhal have taken just as much, if not less, from TWSBI than what TWSBI has taken from Pelican.
Yeah, I saw your video actually, and by the way, I saw a very good video, very thorough breakdown that really illustrate, the point you're making here. To be honest, my biggest surprise looking at your video was that Moonman and Narwhal's pistons weren't exactly the same. I thought they would have been exactly the same. So that was a bit of a surprise to me. But yeah, I mean, you're clearly illustrating that all of them are slightly different, but all of them are quite similar. Yeah. I would say, I think this whole thing is going to backfire for TWSBI more than Kaweco's adventure backfired for Kaweco, because Kaweco took a very unusual approach, and I think it ended up being absolutely toothless and sort of fizzled out. And for that reason, I don't think it also they didn't achieve in any way the desired effect, but because it was so toothless, I don't think it really backfired on them, because few people really noticed what was going on, right? But if TWSBI follows through with this threat now, then either retailers are going to stop selling Narwhal, and I think customers are going to be rightfully pissed off and they're going to hear why that happened, or retailers are going to say, no, we're not going to do that, they're going to have to drop TWSBI, and in which case it's going to negatively affect TWSBI's sales. I think the option that would backfire the least is if TWSBI realizes that they made a mistake, and if they somehow manage to spin this and get out of this whole mess before it escalates any further. I think that's the only way out.
Yeah, they would have to retract it. One more thing before I talk about the retailer aspect. I find it very how should I put this? I find it very ironic that TWSBI is making this claim, because TWSBI's new TWSBI Swipe is almost exactly the same pen as the Pen BBS 500.
You could argue that that Pen BBS 500 in turn was inspired by TWSBI Go, which was this push piston thing, but it's not exactly the same. I wrote a review of Pen BBS 500 a while back, and I said it was somewhere in between a Conid and a TWSBI Go, which I think is still true. So Pen BBS is not a copy, and it's interesting if what you're saying is true, that TWSBI Swipe is now close to Pen BBS 500.
Right. And I think my point here is that all of these mechanisms, none of these are really new. And as Brad said, if I were, starting to throw these stones, I'd make sure my house is not made of glass. And yeah, I think that's really true. They've kind of dug themselves in a hole, and I think they didn't expect the goodwill to Narwhal, because if you're kind of in the know, you kind of realize that, hey, Narwhal is actually made by Moonman, and a lot of people seem to not like Moonman.
Right.
So the reaction and the comparison between Kaweco, I think, here is very apt. I actually personally really, really, really disliked Kaweco's approach of doing it. I thought they were taken away. That's just they were vengeful. It was a toothless, meaningless act that resulted in nothing good. Right, nothing good came out of that. But then, as you said, the impact on themselves is minimal. I actually respect TWSBI's decision here a lot more than I respect Kaweco's way, because they're actually saying, okay, you make your own pens, like, we can't stop you from making your own pens, but we decide to not sell to people who carry you, which is something that happens in retail all the time, right? Like, if you think that a brand is copying you can go to say, hey, like, we don't want you to carry brands that we believe are copies of our products. Brad's analysis was that this puts things on the retailers and it's unfair. I actually don't think so. I think retailers get to face this all the time. If you don't have a physical store with a Mont Blanc display, then you can't sell Mont Blanc. That's just the end of the story. So I think that, the conditions of whether a retailer is able to carry a brand or not, I think that's entirely very fair for the manufacturer to impose. Now, whether the retailers will agree or disagree, I think that's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say that I think in Kaweco's case, it was more of an act of desperation because they probably didn't think they had, I mean, rightfully, they have any other avenues, right? Because there aren't that many retailers, in the West at least, selling, Moonman and Wingsang and, the like. Instead, people buy these pens on eBay and Etsy and Amazon, and there's no way Kaweco would ever be able to convince Amazon to, pull those products, right? I mean, good luck with that. So I don't think Kaweco felt like there was anything they could do. So this was just a pure act of desperation. That's also why it didn't really have any effect.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see because now it's a question of which brand do the retailers believe have more potential.
Yeah, but that's why TWSBI seems like such a bully, right? Because they're really saying that, like, legally we probably can't do anything, but we don't like what Narwhal is doing here. We argue, even though it's not a legal case, but we argue that this pen is too similar, so you have to choose. I think they're being a bully, and it really looks bad. And I'm hoping, to be honest, that some retailers will choose Narwhal over TWSBI.
Well, I think, just looking at the retailer Instagram pages, it does look like a lot of retailers just going ahead and advertising Narwhal anyways. So Narwhal just came out with a new collection. And then, I'm looking at, Atlas Stationers, that they're still, full steam ahead. They like 4 or 5 recent posts on Narwhal pen. They've done exclusive with Narwhal. And Narwhal comes out with interesting colors.
Yeah, they look great. The new pens, they look beautiful. Yeah.
That's a lot more than I can say for TWSBI. Now, I love the TWSBI Draco. I think that pen is great. But, at the same time, TWSBI has their own issues that they need to solve on QA, right? So
yeah, and just on that note, we're saying now that we think, we can prove that we think that Narwhal is made by the same factory that makes Moonman pens. That is not criticism. We have both talked extensively about how much we like the Moonman T1, and I think, and we know, we think that Moonman T1 is a good quality pen at a fantastic price. So I think this model, if this is indeed what Narwhal is doing, to use that factory and have that as a base pen and then create all kinds of customizations, I think that's a brilliant business idea.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think they have several iterations on the pen design itself, but I think they've got a good thing going for them.
Yeah.
My only complaint about Narwhal is that I feel like they should be more forthright with the fact that they keep on saying that they use like in-house nibs, which is just not true, right? So I feel like that's the only thing that I would really want to criticize them for, but otherwise I think they've got a good thing going
for sure.
All right, so that was a long segment.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the latest issue of Shumi no Bungabaku. So we have talked extensively about how this is, Japan's biggest stationery magazine, comes out 4 times a year. It's usually, interviews with Betchori, but every once in a while they have some interesting stuff. So there's 2 things in the latest issue that I wanted to talk about. The first thing is that they had an interview with Sanzen Paper's president. It's a very short interview. There isn't much in way of juicy details, but they did mention that the reason why Tomogawa chose Sanzen was that Sanzen was able to produce paper that is very similar to Tomo River. The other interesting detail is that they have already started production of the new Tomo River Techo, so that 52 GSM paper. They started production last month. There's no mention of who is where you can buy it. My guess would be that you can probably see these Da Vinci refills very soon, because as both Alessa and I have noticed, maybe you noticed that as well, you almost can't buy these Da Vinci Tomo River refills anymore. They seem to be sold out in many places, so they probably have to replenish pretty soon. So that was just one little nugget that I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's cool that I think we're going to be able to see these this new Tomoe River successor and, you know, whatever they name it. I guess quite soon, right? In the next few months then.
I mean, yeah. So the fact that they've already started production probably mean that it's coming out on the market fairly soon. So we'll have to. Like one thing about Da Vinci is that it might not be immediately obvious when they switch over. So maybe we should buy some new packs of refills every few weeks and see if it has changed.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about is that Shumino Bungabaku has this, like every year, I guess. They ask the readers to vote for Pen of the Year. So both the overall Pen of the Year and new Pen of the Year. And this has been a bit of a running joke because the Pen of the Year has been pretty much the same every year. But it's nevertheless, I think, interesting for our listeners because it might not be obvious what some of these pens here are. So there are 10 pens in total. So the overall Pen of the Year, according to Shumino Bungabaku's readers, is Pelikan M800. You know, Brad Dowd asked me about what, you know, foreign brands are popular in Japan, and I said that Mont Blanc and Pelikan are very popular, and Pelikan in particular. I mean, this just shows how popular this brand is. So the number one overall Pen of the Year is Pelikan M800. And then number two is the first Japanese pen, so Platinum 3776.
Yep.
And then you got a Mont Blanc 149, you got another Pelikan, and you got Lamy Safari, another Mont Blanc, Pilot 743, Pilot Kakuno, Lamy 2000, and Pilot Capless. So the other thing interesting about this whole list is you got 3 Pilot pens, you got 0 Sailor pens in the overall Pen of the Year.
All right.
And then the other list is the new Pen of the Year, and this was quite surprising to me. Actually, have you seen this?
I have not.
So this might be difficult, but could you guess the overall new Pen of the Year 2021?
New Pen of the Year. What are the parameters?
I think it's just any pen that was released during last year,
including like colors or.
If a pen came out in a new color, then it qualifies. But yeah.
Oh, then it qualifies. Yeah. Okay. I mean, still that's pretty hard. Gosh, I don't know.
Number 1 is TWSBI.
Oh, okay.
And number 2 is a Pelikan again, the M600 in green and white.
Okay.
Number 3, Lamy 2000 in brown. I didn't even know they came out with a brown pen. But...
Yeah, so these are none of the pens that would have made my top list.
Exactly. And then the fourth one, even less, Parker 51.
Oh my god. I think they need to find new readers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this tells you something about the readership, right? And then number 5 is Platinum 3776 Kinshu.
Oh my goodness. They're all fired.
And then you got Aurora, that Casio Kaleidoscope, whatever it's called.
Okay. At least that's like one good pen on this list. But jeez.
And then you got Carandash Rollerball 849. So maybe that's Kohinata casting all the votes. I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness.
And then finally, spot number 8 is a Sailor pen. Can you guess which Sailor pen would be on this list?
One of the Ebonite ones.
Yes, the Chokoku. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay,
and then you got another Mont Blanc, like Elizabeth Taylor, and then number 10 is Kuritake's Karapo pen.
Okay.
So this this might not be what you think if you listen to our podcast. I mean, this is a whole different. I mean, this tells you something about the readership and what kind of pens are actually popular.
Yeah, and I think pricing has to do with a lot of the rankings because we know that the 3776 is so popular because it's cheap.
Yes.
And that's been told to us by store staff. We know that store staff actually don't like the 3776 so much in terms of the quality, but they're very easy to sell because of the price point.
Yeah.
And also because of the slip and seal cap. So, yeah, I think I know that the people in the industry actively read this magazine. I was working in my last job. One of our store staff used to work for Mont Blanc in the shop as the tencho, as the head of the shop. And so he used to read Shumibun. And I remember when we first met, he's like, "Oh my God, I've seen you in Shumibun before." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's me." No, it's a funny anecdote. But yeah, we know that the people in the industry do read this book. So I wonder how Sailor would feel about that. I hope it doesn't mean that they're going to make more of these, awkward ebonite pens.
I would say though, I mean, we talked about this ebonite pen when it came out, and from the photos they looked all black and boring. When you see them in person, they do look a bit nicer though. The patterns are pretty nice. Yeah.
They're a little bit nicer, but they're not $800 nice, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so, speaking of the ebonite one, they recently, as in, a few weeks ago, they came out with a new model that, as far as I can tell, is the exact same shape, but this time it's not an ebonite. This time they have an urushi pen, and this series, I believe, is called Kirikane.
Yeah.
And normally I wouldn't think that it's super interesting, but the press release actually shows the 6 steps that they use to make this Kirikane pen. And what they do is, I think, actually pretty cool. They have these gold foils, and they attach them to the pen, and then they apply urushi over the pen. And the person that's made these pens is actually like an urushi master, who is from Kyoto. Now I believe they are really focused on this specific type of urushi. I think it's cool to see Sailor kind of going with this, seeking out masters of the art and collaborating on these pens like this. Even though I think these designs are not for me, I do appreciate that they're doing that.
They did that a few times last year. They've done that a few times recently now, right? They have like 2 like pens they use as canvas, and they release new versions with different types of like urushi art. Yeah, it's thumbs up from me.
Yeah. And then second thing, or last thing from Sailor that I want to talk about is this Ancora first anniversary pen. It's a Pro Gear, not a surprise. What is a surprise is that I think this is one of the very few screen printed Pro Gears that they're going to have. So they have screen printed this, cute flower design all over the body and the cap, and they have a special flower design on the nib as well. This, I think, is very good. And I guess we're going to see more of these anniversary pens coming out of Ancora. So I think Ancora limited editions are, they've clearly gone above and beyond for this, although it is a bit expensive.
Yeah, but it isn't roughly the same price, taking FX rates into account as that, rolls with everything in the US, and this is a lot more elaborate than that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the comparison for sure between Every Rose Has a Thorn, which is a terrible name, and this one. But yeah, I do like where that's headed, and I hope there's going to be more on that. Pilot also came out with a new pen, the Neo Classic 912. You took a picture of this pen and you uploaded it today, I believe.
Yeah, I went.
So you bought one.
Yeah, I went to Morrison today and picked up one. And actually, I asked the staff at Morrison if this model has a name, right? Because I've seen online that Pentanut call it Neo Classic. I think also Shosaikan. But the store display, this sort of promotion thing they had from Pilot, it did not mention Neoclassic anywhere. The label did not say Neoclassic, and Morrison sales staff said, no, this is just called, Custom 912 2022 limited edition color.
I wonder why that is, because Bungabox also calls it neoclassic. All the shops are calling it neoclassic. I'm looking at, Rakuten, they're calling it neoclassic. So Nagasawa's calling it neoclassic. So I just wonder why. That's so weird.
Yeah, I think I have to go to Itoya and ask. I consider Itoya to be the closest you get to the official word, because the thing is about this custom kai, this custom club things, there's no information from Pilot. That's always the case. I search Pilot's website for the word custom kai. There's only one mention, like a footnote on one page, that if you want to buy a Pilot pen, you should seek out the store that is an authorized Pilot retailer. This custom kai go to, but there's no mention about any custom kai pen. So you have to go to the retailers. They seem to be the only ones that have this information.
Yep. But I am happy that they're doing it in this 912 shape, because usually they do it in the smaller 74.
Yeah, last year's model was kind of boring. It was a 91. It was just this opaque color, like red, yellow, and green or something like that. It was kind of boring. Yeah, this year's one is definitely more interesting. It's quite dark. It's not quite as dark as that Shosaikan, custom 823, but it's if you want to take a photo, it's not easy to show the transparency. You have to work a bit. Yeah,
I agree. And even if you have it in hand, this is not easy to see it. I definitely think that it's a difficult pen to photograph. Okay. I want to end the podcast on a note about Hanabi Glassworks. I mentioned, a few months ago, I went down to the workshop and, had a great time. Lucas was a great guy. Really amazing experience, actually, to see him turn these pens. Or I guess blow these pens would be a better description. And at the end of my kind of, discussion of our visit, I said, I wish that Hanabi will, be a bit adventurous with their body shapes. Now, a few months later, I think Hanabi's definitely come out with shapes that I think are incredible. Specifically, this Resplendent series, I think, is a great shape. It looks like a classic pen as well, but it has that kind of fluidity and that kind of motion that you couldn't get with anything except a glass pen or a dip pen. So I think that's very, very cool. Have you managed to see these pens?
I'm looking at the Instagram posts right now. Yeah, it looks a little bit similar to whatever pens Hachimonja is selling. That's what it looks like to me. But yeah, the design is pretty. The next pen, which I guess you're going to be talking about next, it's a bit more unusual, right?
Yeah. So yesterday, 23 hours ago, Lucas he uploaded this wild pen, and this is a oblique. This is a glass pen that is shaped after an oblique nib holder. So it's got this. It's got the pen body, which I really like the shape of as well, and then it's got this flange thing on the side, where then you have the glass nib. This pen is sick. This pen is so cool.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like this before. Personally, being left-handed, I don't need oblique nibs, but I would be worried about breaking it. I mean, glass pens, they're already inherently fragile because of the material, even though there are some types of glass that are more resilient than others. But I would be afraid to even hold this in my hand. I'm sure it's well made. I'm sure it won't actually break easily, but it looks like this would break easily.
Well, I'll tell you what this pen will be very, very useful for. This will be very useful for calligraphers who want to do monoline Spencerian or just monoline, even let's say business cursive, right? Usually you have to hold either the paper at a slant or the pen at a slant. Now, European calligraphers usually do everything with a straight holder, right? So that's what we have. But especially in the Americas, they often do pointed nib calligraphy with oblique holders because that actually helps you with the angle, so you don't have to rotate the paper. So this will be very good for people who want to do that, but in a monoline nib, and be able to use a lot of different inks at the same time without necessarily, wiping down the nib so thoroughly every single time.
Yeah, well, I think he made it because he could, right? This is a product that didn't exist on the market. So if it works well, then that's great. I mean, it looks really cool.
Yeah, this is a crazy pen. I love this pen. I think this is such a great idea. All right. So it's been a long one. Anything else that you wanted to add before we sign off?
No, let's save the rest for next episode.
So that's been the episode, and we would love it if you help us spread the word. Talk about us on forums, on write about us on your blogs or whatever. Just keep spreading the word. Really, really appreciate all of the listeners who tuned in today, and yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks. With that, my name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm Fudefan on Instagram, and on Twitter I have a blog at fudefan.com.
All right, bye-bye.